Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. We're super duper naturally doing it this morning. However, I just got to download some integration of information that I wanted to share with you through a beautiful metaphor, metaphysical understanding that we often understand about the seed of potential within us, and we understand how seeds in nature work. They are the little tiniest, or whatever size it is, of whatever is going to grow. We understand that seed already has locked within it the DNA understanding of whatever that's going to be. You don't put, a rose seed into the ground and get a watermelon. We already know that. And so if we take the idea of our seed, we come in, being kind of brainwashed into believing that we're a weed seed. Most of us, that's the old paradigm, is that we're bad and wrong, and let me show you all the ways how and why. I'm better than you, and let me show you that too. And we just vacillate around in that old understanding, the old matrix where it's dog eat dog, etc. And my seed is better than yours. I can show you. Let me do that. 111. Thank you. What came to me is the understanding that it's necessary once we get a hold of our life and we've gone through, our spiritual awakening, or the day we wake up and go, what the is this? What do I need to do? It seems my life is out of control. What do I do? If we understand ourselves to be that seed that is in our own garden. Okay, we have our own garden plot, my friends. Oftentimes when we look around, we find out that, hey, my garden plot has a whole bunch of other stuff in here. Nobody can be seated in my garden my garden plot, but me. No one can rightfully be seated there because I am my own independent and sovereign nation, energetically, spiritually, etc. I came in alone, I'll go out alone, no matter how many people might be surrounding me. That's a personal experience, baby. So if I really take that into my garden plot experience, then I understand that if I see other stuff that has put themselves or itself into my garden plot with me, it is not righteously there and does not share space divinely, because I am my own energetic space and my own seed that needs my exact plot that was given to me to grow the fullest potential of me. And no matter what others might want to do, I'm still not best to try to be a hybrid watermelon rose. If I was really coming here to be a rose, then I need to be a rose. And some of us, are hybrids. We've already come with some, other plants that may not be so familiar to earth, and that is fine. However, that is also divine that is coming through, and it kind of hacks people off that feel like they aren't worthy, they aren't good enough. Whenever we start looking around and kicking out, the weeds and the pests and things that are eating our garden up. When light workers and star seeds or healers or people that, follow a divine path for themselves, when we wake up and understand that, this right here is my plot of land, and it seems to be occupied by a whole lot of stuff that I don't want to be growing, rotten tomatoes in my garden. I don't want tomatoes at all, and I don't want stuff hurled over the fence. If I even have one. I don't want pests eating up my beautiful, fragile nubile leaves that are just sprouting up. I don't want to be nibbled to the ground and have to start all over every single time. That's a meltdown. And Phoenix Rising gets a little bit boring and tiring and uses a whole lot of resources. I'd like to just be the garden of me. Well, how do I do that? I have to identify, am I a garden experience of me by myself in my energy and in my sovereignty and my understanding of my multidimensionality? And that's an honest question that must be asked, 404. And when we look around and see that, it looks to me that I have a whole bunch of others stuff that's in my vicinity, that's actually in my sovereignty, or attempting to be, then I need to start looking at what that is and how do I remove that from me? How do I take care of the pests that are eating me? How do I take care of the rabbit who comes in and steals my carrot the minute that I get a little tiny bit of it? Because the carrot is hungry, the rabbit is super duper hungry, it's starving, and so it's just roaming, hungry ghosts are roaming from garden to garden, and it doesn't care if your little tiny, carrot that you've just sprouted and just beginning, it doesn't care. It's going to consume it if it's allowed to. And that is the lack of boundaries that earthlings, human beings, we have developed over time and space, that this fifth race, that we're starting here is a new consciousness and a new understanding of how we're going to be doing 505, our gardening in the future. And it is to be very happy to put up energetic borders, put up fences, however you conceive that, to protect what is our space and our sovereignty. My garden plot is me, baby. I don't share that with anyone. It doesn't mean that I'm not in a garden with other things that are sharing the garden collaboratively. However, if we're all interspersed and we're tangled up, that's weeds and flowers overgrowing others, and we end up crushing others, or they end up crushing us because we're not reaching the sunlight that is really best for us. We're not being watered properly, or we have a hog plant over here that requires far more than we do. However, we won't ever get, what we need to if we're underneath the leaves of it, or we're being consumed in the root, with deep generational traumas and stuff that we can't figure out. If we're rooted in that somehow, entangled right from the very, bottom core of our subconsciousness, then we need to rat around and find out what is taking over me, and how can I start clearing out this plot of me, this ground, this sacred ground, that maybe the water's been contaminated. We never know. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in our gardening area that is designated just for us. And so when we start looking around and identifying that we have a wild rabbit that's coming through and eating every time we get a little breakthrough, eliminate the rabbit problem. You don't have to eliminate one rabbit at a time. I highly suggest that you figure out how to remove rabbit pests. Rabbits have their place. However, they don't have a place in my garden eating my shit. That's just all there is to it. You have some other place where, once a garden is established and they're leaving, carrots on the outside of their garden plot, and you want to come by, absolutely. That's called somebody that's in their life mission, their life work, and their passion, and their dharma. It's not called somebody that's doing karmic cycles. That's called a karmic cycle. And, a rabbit is eating up the resources of another, and then that plant, that seed, never reaches its full potentiality and is just living wondering what's wrong with me. This is not to say that rabbits are bad or wrong for doing that. They're opportunistic in this instance, the way that I'm hearing it and seeing it. This is an opportunistic type energy that wants to consume resources, however you want to understand that. And a rabbit is not bad for wanting to eat when it is super hungry. However, the rabbit needs to understand its food chain, its food source, and its ecosystem is that in a balanced ecosystem, you cannot destroy the gardeners or the garden or those plots by coming and eating the very nubile pieces. Wait until I have a carrot to offer to you, and do not snitch anything from me. So the way that we understand that is that we identify, I believe I have a rabbit munching problem. I believe I have, undermining pests that are, moles that are eating me, down beneath me, and I don't even know what's happening. Start digging around, and find out. Or I have weeds that are coming in. Weeds have their space too. However, friend, they do not have their space with you if they are destroying you. I've never known a weed that was kind in a garden, and we usually snatch them up pretty aggressively. However, we don't, think too much about the weedy people that we're hanging around with, or that we're being a weed to someone else by being codependent and enmeshed. When we're entangled in very dysfunctional and toxic ways, we are killing off the seeds of other people, and we ourselves are activating the weed seed in us. And that is a seed that every single person, we have weed seed in us, of course, the dark, that which is so very unenlightened. We all come with the weed seed. It's part of the seed that we have, that part. And we also have the seed that is the hybrid seed, when we really understand we are hybrid. We have both light and dark, and we have the potential. That seed, the weed seed, we all have. However, the other side of that seed that is the greatest expression of us, of what we need to be in order to fulfill our purpose, our mission, and just what brings us the joy, however you understand that. When we, 919, when we activate that, then we understand, oh yeah, I'm not going to be playing weed seed anymore, because invariably if I'm being a weed or weeds are taking over me, it's because I don't understand energetic boundaries, and maybe I believe that I am that, or that I deserve to have my rose self in the middle of a garden plot that's mine, that's being overtaken, and I don't want to say out loud that, hey, can you get the F out of here? I don't like you. We may not even understand that we don't like that. We may have been groomed into believing for decades, for eons, for lifetimes, for generations, whatever your story is, that is what is normal and okay for our garden spot. And it absolutely is no longer okay for people to walk around believing that they do not have sovereignty, or that they need to listen to somebody else tell them 10-10 that is okay for me to run up on you again and again and eat your little teeny tiny growth at the very top. We're just going to nibble that down. The rabbit walks away hungry anyway, and they'd be better off to go drop your own seeds. Maybe that's the seed of you, little rabbit, is that you're supposed to grow your own garden. Be your own rabbit, be your own garden, and be your own source of food and nourishment, because thieving it from someone else, or being angry that they are feeding themselves, is an old paradigm thing. That's old earth, it's the matrix, it's the age of Pisces. However you want to look at that stuff, it's stuff that doesn't serve. However you understand that, it is a thinking and an understanding that does not work for the collaboration of humanity to get through these horrible experiences that we're having right now, and these upgrades, etc., to the planet. There's a lot of destruction that's coming up, that's happening because we have to untangle and weed out gardens and remove the pests and allow the rabbit to, take their unrest elsewhere. Look, rabbit, you may not come in here. Look, roly-poly, look, worm, whatever it is that would eat me. I may be willing to allow a ladybug to come by because it's a collaborative experience. However, I'm not going to be willing to let a worm, or a caterpillar come and munch me to death. I might be able to say, hey, yeah, you can have a few leaves. Absolutely, that's part of your growth process, and that's what you need to do. However, you don't get to just come through and start eating on me. That is not okay. That's the old understanding of me, and I no longer do that. 1144. We're going to need to have, a perimeter around this for anything that crosses this perimeter, this energetic sacred bubble, this sanctuary I've created for myself, and gotten my little garden plot nice and clean and pristine again. I'm going to need to have an understanding that there are signs all over my perimeter, all over my border, that say no trespassers, and that's fair. That's not unkind as a spiritual person, as a evolved person, as a light worker, starseed 1212. It absolutely is not. It is absolutely more clear to those that are unclear. When we stand in our righteousness and our rightfulness, didn't say self-righteousness, our righteous position, and we understand ourselves, and we are really standing in our righteous position rightfully. We already know that, and there isn't anything to fight for. We just simply say, no, I don't do that anymore. No, thank you. And we keep our perimeter very, very fortified and very, very, energetically. We're sending out messages of, I don't mess with people that want to mess with me. If you want heat, then okay, I've got, a lot of protection here. If you want to come across the electric fence, across the gun line, I guess you can. There's a lot of protection here. However, I don't want to live in my, spot believing that I need to be gunned up just to deal with what might come in. I do want to believe so much, friend, that I'm a giant, whole, whatever I am, a big giant tree, that, yeah, there's not going to be, a rabbit that will come and destroy me unless that rabbit has the ability to come and gnaw me as I'm in my formative state, as I'm trying to rebuild again and again and again. And understanding that is such a precious understanding, friend, that when we're just beginning our awakening, just beginning our journey, or we're feeling vulnerable in that journey, we're growing new shoots somewhere, that we need to really put a kibosh on the rabbits who want to come in and eat that stuff to the ground because they're hungry. Or we have pests that come through and try to eat us on some level. It is okay. Doesn't seem like it's okay given the old paradigm. It's not very kind. It is not very kind to be dishonest with people, or to be dishonest with the pests and the weeds that want to set up shop in everything that we are, especially when we know I have a greater mission here. I feel like there's something I'm supposed to be doing. I have a life purpose here. I believe everybody does. However, I don't know the answer to why somebody else doesn't want to know about theirs. I just know I have one. Then I'm not going to argue with you about about whether you agree with me or not. There is no argument. What would you be arguing with me about? That's an argument with thee that you can do at your house. Bye-bye, rabbit, and move on. Not to be cruel, however, to be absolutely understanding that there's a rabbit that's very hungry, then I'm not feeding it if it's coming in snitching, bitching, whining, or crying, or trying to hold me at gunpoint because it's trying to take the very fragile piece of me that is still connected to the root. That just takes so much energy, and it takes so much of my mind to have to come by and go, man, did that effing rabbit really just come by and do this to me again? Well, how do you fix that, friend? You put up a perimeter. You get very good at communicating. I don't do rabbit infestation, If I had extra to give, I would possibly give it to you. And even if I had a whole bounty, a cornucopia of carrots and vegetables that could be for you, if you come in and hold me at gunpoint, we're not going to have that. You're a rabbit with a gun. You will not do that. That cannot be the way that this will run. So being very clear in my communication out here, being very clear in my energy here, that I fortify me, I feed me, and I nourish all the new life and the seed within me, and get rid of the weed seed idea and understand I'm a hybrid. I'm not just a weed, and I'm not just a rose or whatever it is that I am. I am a hybrid of both light and dark, and I need to balance that. And I don't help other people balance any better by allowing them to continue to be imbalanced with me. The greatest, most high vibrational activity that I can engage in with other people is to notice that, oh, you're a hungry rabbit, or you're, a weed that's trying to insidiously get yourself near me. Then the kindest thing I can do, honestly, is to say, yeah, you're going to have to go do you, and be very clear about the boundary here is an absolute no. That's a NFW. You may not go there. There's absolutely no tolerance for that kind of fugazi in my world. My gardening is better, tighter, and I'm responsible for it, not responsible for you and your garden. However, I am responsible for keeping my garden area, my specific space, and my sovereignty in the grace of receiving the sunlight, the nourishment, the watering, and the handling of those gardeners that might come in and want to share, time and space with me, or other plants that wish to grow collaboratively in their garden plot somewhere near me, or even a caterpillar that may want to be able to munch a leaf. Well, absolutely, a caterpillar can come and munch a leaf if it is coming and it asks for permission. It's there by righteous and divine movement to be there, and I have that to give. A caterpillar starving cannot come in and take precedent over me if I'm this big, and that caterpillar is not going to get fed and nourished properly by my one little leaf. However, if it's going to destroy me in its pursuit of I'm hungry, I must have, then what have I really gained in that? It is not kind to allow people to stay in that kind of ignorance and being that blind. It is more fair, more righteous, more holy, more sacred to be honest with ourselves. Where am I being a weed somewhere else, and where am I allowing weeds to come into me? Excuse me. And how do I protect my space by energetically fortifying the garden plot of me so that I can continue to culture and grow my hybrid experience, where it's less of that, stuff that, one or two generations of this within me, where I get a new bud going. It's going to have less and less and less, excuse me, of the flaws or the weedy type stuff that would allow that weed to believe it's got company and resonance here. No, you don't. I'm taking that out of the next evolutionary experience of me, the next upgrade of me. I'm moving away from that weedy experience with thee. Thank you anyway. We don't have anything in common. Weeds all go wherever weeds go. However, they don't go here. I'm not judging it necessarily. However, discerning the fuck right out of it and being clear about what that means, that I don't have to hate the weed for being a weed. I need to understand it, and I need to protect myself from it, or keep myself so fortified that it has absolutely no interest in coming here, because it understands that this is not soil that is going to be nutrient rich for you. You will not like that, and you won't make it past the electric fence anyway, or the whatever the perimeter is that I've built with myself and my gardening team within me. So I'm on my way to go hike today. We're right before the equinox, so I'm super excited. I have no idea what it's going to be today, other than that download came through, and the gardener of you and me. Let me just say to you whatever you have to do to answer it. Today I'm gardening in the woods and gardening in the mountains, and getting my downloads and my experience there, where I'm being nourished and fed by the sun, the water, and all the gardening masters inside of me, and those who are assisting me, the ascended masters of gardening that are within me, and those that work with me, to believe that that is true, and to let me know that there's no weed that's going to come through that has any power or any ability to do anything. We're protecting you. However, if I start looking at the fence or checking and getting very bothered by it, I'm creating holes in my consciousness, holes in my perimeter, so to speak, holes in my mind. And so it's really about fortifying however it is that we do, especially at these high power times. And may you find something that works for you, simply by asking, what can I do to weed out the weird stuff, in me, and allow others to be doing whatever they do without needing to manage it, because there's no way we're going to weed anybody else's garden. When we try to, and we do, we're in a whole job that you're going to be weeding that garden forever, and they will let you. Meanwhile, they're eating, your branches, your leaves, your everything, and allowing pests to create a corridor and a tunnel right to you. So I hope that you are well no matter what part of the day you're in, and I hope you enjoy yourselves, my friend, and get within your skin, because your divine is absolutely fine. And that gardener, the seed, the hybrid, the dark, the light, keep on transforming and and keep evolving and growing to where we have less of the weed gene going. The weed seed is kind of evolved out, and that we come and we deal with the little weed that might be growing from within us. We snatch that little sucker out. However, it does have to start with a major excavation, and we already know the blueprint within us that Master Gardens already know. Master Gardens us, and understands our seed and our seed need, hybrid, all the beauty that it is. It already knows how to do that. So the more we consult this, instead of worrying about how somebody else should or shouldn't be, or allow that shit to talk to me, no. That is how I get inside here and get very good, and go talk to Mother Nature, because she's a great source of inspiration, because she already knows how to do this very well, as do I. So when I connect and have that conversation more directly, it just makes it a more rich and beautiful experience for me. So 2112, thank you very much. As I said, get within your skin and enjoy your divine, because your divine is gorgeous, you beautiful blossom. It's absolutely gorgeous and is totally fine. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again next time. Mwah. Bye, beautiful flower.